comment and department updates, but we cannot deliberate until we have quorum. So in the, looking at time, we will get started. Are we live? Thank you. All right, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, December 9th meeting of the Finance Assessment and Taxation Committee. Committee members present currently are myself and Councilmember Keegan. We are also joined by Councilmember Anane and Councilmember Conti. A few topics for discussion this evening. We're going to first discuss Local Law E of 2025. This is a local law amending the charter for a financial update to the annual financial plan. We're also going to have a general discussion on capital projects and debt authorizations. And then with that, we have all of our bond ordinances listed as part of the agenda that have not passed out of committee yet, including police and vehicles equipment, sidewalk reconstruction, and street reconstruction. We do have one signed up for public comment this evening. So at this time, Carl, if you can join us here at the front, just make sure the mic is on and state your name and city of residence for the record.
All right. Hi there. So good evening, Carl Urich, Lenox Avenue, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to do a bit of a quick recap and then get to a punchline. You know, what I've said before at previous public comment is, you know, there's nothing personal in my comment. There's no recipe for how we run the city of Albany, and I completely understand that we make decisions, and I may just not agree with certain decisions and outcomes, but certainly there's nothing personal in my comments. So just a quick recap. On November 17th, I spoke at the 2026 budget hearing. I recommended that our current fiscal position suggests the needs for cuts of $4 million in OPEX, $4 million in CAPEX. I provided 10 reasons or drivers for this and emailed members of the Common Council afterwards expanding on those data points. On or about November 24th, the Treasurer's Department released Q3 25 actuals, the third quarter interim financial report. This report is exceptionally concerning. Maybe some of this information is old news, but I haven't heard anyone using our concerning 2025 trajectory to suggest changes in the 2026 budget. Yesterday, I emailed the Common Council. The headline of that email is that the current trajectory of the city's finances, in my opinion, suggests the strong potential for a fiscal collapse. I suggested a few things as actions: get a Q4 forecast from the Treasurer and have a dialogue around it, understand what measures and their beneficial impact have been implemented in the past weeks that will mitigate top and bottom line damage. And lastly, I recommended that the 2026 budget, the entire budget, should be recast based on our 2025 numbers and position. I noted, quote, "We need to stop pretending that we're in a great position when we're not. We need a budget, both revenue and expense lines, grounded in reality. Our goal for a recalibrated 2026 budget is to prevent further collapse." So since then, I've worked through the Q3 actuals. I've folded in the revenue and expense direction from the Q3 interim report into some work that I've done. I'll admit I'm not a career finance professional. I don't have access to all of the financial information in detail, so I had to make some what I believe are reasonable guesses. And given that, here's my guidance on the required direction of the 2026 budget. I would suggest that the 2026 budget needs operating expense cuts that are $8 million minimum, and it's not unreasonable to target OPEX cuts up to 10 to 12 million. So that'd be a 3.5% to 5% cut off of the 2026 proposed budget. Capital expense cuts, dovetailing that into the purpose of today's meeting. Capital expense cuts should be on the order of 10 to 12 million, kind of up to a third of the debt portion of the SIP. So that's 10 to 12 million on the 33.165 debt number for 2026. This is a multi-year problem that requires a multi-year solution. So the CapEx cuts will sound a little high to see multi-year benefit. This is a hearing on debt, so I'd suggest a few questions, actually just two, that should be asked of our budget and finance department, and they're really pretty simple and straightforward. You know, the first one is, do you believe the city's financial position is so dire that it requires material capital improvement plan cuts? And by material, I mean, you know, pick a number, 5 million or more. If the answer is yes, then the question becomes, how would you make those decisions? How would you prioritize? How would you defer? How would you trim, give certain items a haircut, you know, whatever? And if no, you know, if there's not a perception of a need to make cuts, I honestly just don't even know what to do with that answer. I would say that, you know, there's probably a dialogue worth having. I can appreciate that my point of view is on the extremely pessimistic side, and very few people rally around, you know, let's make dramatic budget cuts. However, I believe that the data in our budgeting and spending behaviors defend a very pessimistic point of view at this time. However, the city and our economy is a complex system, and no one can say with any certainty how things will play out. It is certainly possible I'm 100% wrong. I don't think so. What I do hope is that you at least consider, and by you, sort of royal you, what I do hope is that you at least consider taking a position where we are hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. I mean, you're all leaders. You have permission and a responsibility to decide and execute tough decisions in tough times. Please at least consider making the tough decisions that our city likely needs. Thank you, as always, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Urich. At this time, looking at the agenda, we are going to have a discussion first on local law E, which I would welcome our city treasurer and budget director to join us up at the front as well for conversation. First, local law E, just reading it into the record. This is a local law amending the charter of the city of Albany in relation to requiring a mid-year update to the annual financial plan, introduced by Councilmember Conti. Thank you. And for the record, Councilmember Ballerin has joined us, and we now have quorum and can deliberate. So first I'll turn to Councilmember Conti to explain this local law.
Sure, thank you. First, on the Section 1, amending the title, there is, I guess this would be a typo, or maybe the term annual financial plan should be underlined. That is new language. And it was submitted, I think, in the transition from when I was submitted and when it got on the agenda, somehow the underlining got dropped. But that is a section of the code that deals with the budget process, you know, the whole process in terms of introduction, consideration, et cetera, which never had a title. The budget is our financial plan, so that's the title I was giving that. So that language, that title should be underlined. Then Section 2, which adds in the operable language, this would require, and I use the Commissioner of Administrative Services because it is an office specified in the charter currently, and the budgeting function is under the Commissioner of Administrative Services. This would not require any kind of a permissive referendum because it doesn't change anything. But in theory, it would be the budget director that would be doing the mid-year report. But this would add language requiring that basically the Commissioner of Administrative Services or designee submitted an annual mid-year report on the financial plan on or before October 15th. The language itself is basically the same language that's in the state finance law that applies to the state director of budget, who also does the, you know, a mid-year financial plan update. So it's the same language, same concept that exists in state law. Would put it here so that the council would have that mid-year report. It is, and I did an early draft sent to Gideon, so he's seen this prior, and I think he's also familiar with it from what he did in his previous position in Westchester. So it's not something new or anything. This does not replace the quarterly reports from the treasurer's office, which are more or less, you know, kind of cash flow reports. with some commentary and analysis. Would come directly from the budget director, who actually puts together the budget and the financial plan, and whose role on a day-to-day basis is to monitor the financial plan and where we are, et cetera. So it's not creating anything new. It's really taking what is already being done and putting it into an update for the council and the mayor. That would be public, and that would provide additional information in advance of starting the budget process, so you have a better sense also as to where we are in the current fiscal year as you look at the budget for the following fiscal year. So it's intended to provide you with another tool, and I think it's one of the tools that you would be useful, and there are other things that I think the next council needs to do, obviously, in terms of issues related to the charter, et cetera, but this is one start that I think we can do this year.
Thank you, Councilmember Conti. Budget Director Gideon Grande, do you want to opine on this?
Yeah, no, as Councilmember Conti stated, we talked about this a little bit when it was originally introduced, and I think it's a positive step for the city, and really have no objection or anything like that, so.
And one quick question. It says the Commissioner of Administrative Services just naturally, or their designee, you assume that they will defer it to our Budget Director?
Yes. I mean, right now, Budget Director is within the Department of Administrative Services. So it's, the Budget Director is not a position that's stated either in code or in the charter, so that's why I also selected Administrative Services.
Right.
And that function is under Administrative Services. In fact, I think Gideon is currently the Acting Commissioner of Administrative Services.
Yeah, correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
Perfect. Councilmember Keegan.
I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I also feel like I should ask because it's somewhat unclear. So we're talking about August as being the mid-year, despite June really being the end of Q2. Is that intended to provide some time for the budget director to do that two-quarter analysis?
Yeah, and I think in looking at the provision within the state finance law, there was a date that was not exactly the mid-year. And I tried to model that, and the budget calendar on the state is different than ours. We have a calendar year, they have a different fiscal year. So I wanted to model it in a way, picked a date that was reasonably after the mid-year point, but not too close to when you got the budget, so that gave you time to look at things. So it tried to create that, yeah, June 30th wouldn't work. And in theory, I think August would provide the time to put together something.
I mean, there's nothing to prevent
Yeah.
him or her or whoever our budget director is, should you leave us, Gideon, and hopefully you don't, from submitting the report slightly earlier.
No.
It's just that they can't do any later. I think the only other piece to that is that all the department budgets are coming in as of July 30th. So
I mean, yeah, I think it would be difficult to produce this type of report in a meaningful and detailed way in probably less than 30 days. I mean, whether you say it's due August 1st or August 15th, I don't think really changes much, but I think you do need at least a 30-day, delay on the issuing of the report.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I was assuming that we were very intentional with that, but I also didn't want to not ask the question, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Anane.
I just want to commend the sponsor for introduction of this local law. Again, it's, especially, we all have a fiduciary responsibility with taxpayers, and the more information we know about, particularly the city finances, the better. The only recommendation is that when they say that to submit to the mayor and the common council, I was wondering why the chief city auditor or the treasurer wasn't added, and would you be open to adding them as well?
I don't want to do any amendments because it would require then a delay. and we don't have any time because this is our last meeting. But there's nothing to prevent, I mean, these reports, when they're submitted, they're public reports, so they would be available to the treasurer and the chief city auditor as well. And if at a later point you wanted to add that, that's fine, but that would happen anyway.
If no further questions or comments on this local law, I just want to thank you, Councilmember Conti, again for bringing this forward. I think it's a step to enhance our transparency and our oversight of the budget process, and also get to see our budget director more outside of budget season, which we would appreciate those additional updates. Is there a motion? Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to move local law E out of committee with a positive recommendation. Local law E of 2025 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, we have a positive motion recommendation from Councilmember Keegan to move local law E of 2025 out of committee. We have a second from Councilmember Ballard. All those in favor? Aye. Local law E of 2025 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation and will be voted on during our meeting this upcoming Monday. Okay. Now we are getting to the bulk of the conversation that we want to have, and thank you again to our budget director and treasurer for joining us this evening. As you're aware, we held on passing bond ordinances during the budget passing process because we wanted a more detailed just conversation on our overall debt, overall leverage, and understanding our overall financial position from the city, because there are some concerns around, are we looking at too much debt, and what are the future years looking like for our city. So I would love to start with just a general update from you all, any additional thoughts you have on that, so that we can have a fruitful discussion.
Sure. I'll start. I think you all have my third quarter report right now, and I certainly say that you know, the warning signs are certainly here and on the horizon. I think that you know, we right now we're let's say 2024, we were fortunate in that our expenses were down, especially on non-personnel services, that allowed us to basically move forth with a balanced budget in 2024. This year, we're having revenue decreases, or they're not coming in as expected in the budget, and that's causing us to, you know, put the budget in balance, in imbalance. We've certainly taken all the measures that we can here, including issuing a ban rather than a RAN, revenue anticipation note. We issued a ban on unborrowed capital funds that ordinarily would have been borrowed in March of last year. But frankly, because some of the projects moved forth more quickly than had been anticipated at that time, we issued a ban, a 3-month ban, to utilize that to pay off those bills. And these are kind of, we don't often issue mid-year bans, but it's certainly something that's in the toolbox to make sure that we are able to cover all the bills and all the all the work that's been done. We've, you know, scoured our capital accounts and moved those funds out when projects have not been completed. Something we do on an annual basis, but I think we are at the point now where we know funds are not going to be used so previously borrowed funds are not going to be used for particular projects because the projects are completed or they're not going to be done. So you know, that's good, and we've you know, moved reserve funds into to be available for our use this year. It does leave us with little wiggle room for next year. I think that how that affects what we're here for tonight, which is borrowing in the capital projects, is to be seen. I think you all have my debt report from September. We're in a fairly good debt position overall. We're well below our constitutional borrowing limit. But as I've discussed here in the past, that the more that we expend on capital projects and the more that we expend on debt service, it crowds out other spending, other expenses that we might otherwise allocate elsewhere. What's done is done as far as borrowing is concerned, are the capital projects that this council has green-lighted over the last several years. We have currently I guess it'll be about $120 million ban coming due in March. That will the next step after that is to reban those funds, and or to include new funds that we think are necessary in the capital project, the capital budget for 2026 that you will be voting on in the next week or two. And that's something that we will have to work with the administration to do. We are trying to manage within our debt schedule and our budget to do that as efficiently as possible. I am looking forward to reduced interest rates over the next few months, which would help for sure. And we also we work with our financial advisors to figure out what the best path is for borrowing that's most economically efficient. My guess at this point is that we will likely ban a portion, so short-term borrowing for the newer, most recent projects as most efficient way to do things. And then for the older projects, the ones that have been on on the list and the ban list longer, those are ones we'll likely bond for this year. It remains possible if for example, interest rates suddenly sink completely, they may take advantage of that opportunity to bond the whole thing, but those are discussions that we'll be having over the next, several weeks and months before we go out to borrow again in March.
Thank you.
Anything you want to add, or? Yeah.
Okay. Just opening up to a few questions, how often you mentioned the 120 million ban coming due in March, and the next steps are looking to reban and or increase and add to funds to that ban. How typical is that? Like, do we typically do the reban process?
Yeah, we have been, you probably don't have the debt schedule in front of you, but we have not actually issued a bond since 2022. So we have been banning, if I may create a word, banning 23, 24, 25, and will be 26 since then. It's short-term borrowing. You think of it kind of like a low-interest credit card is one way to think about it, and a bond is essentially a mortgage payment, if you want to make that analogy. And the interest rate on short-term borrowing is pretty good. So for the ban we just issued for the next 3 months, it was below 3% in interest, which is good in this environment. So the question that we'll be facing, no matter what this council approves as far as the bond authorizations for 2026, the question that the next administration is going to be facing is, what is it that we actually want to do, need to do, must do, or can put off, or not do at all? And so that's really the questions that are going to have to be dealt with over the next several weeks. What is the 120 million is money that we have to reissue either with bond debt or ban debt. What is new and added with the 2026 capital plan is I don't want to say fungible, but we have options on what to do with that. Either not borrow it, continue to borrow it if we can, or to initiate projects if we can or want to. And those are the discussions really for the administration.
And just for public awareness, with our authorization of bonds for the ordinance doesn't mean that they're actually going to bond. That just gives the power, the authority to bond if you would.
Correct.
If you so choose.
Correct. So you can issue bond authorizations for $50 million, and if the administration says, "Oop, can't do that," so we don't borrow anything.
Yeah. Okay. Looking to committee members first for any other comments, questions here. Councilmember Ballerin.
So, if we are looking to save and reduce our bonding, I would say we should look at the full bonding request for the full year and not just what we have in front of us. So I would say if we're going to do that, then it has to be a much deeper, honest conversation about some other initiatives that we've already voted for and supported, and not just look at these 4 that are in front of us, these 3 that are in front of us today, because I think.
Could we, I'm just looking at Brian or Carly, could we get a printout of the active calendar so that we can have all the bonds?
So, I mean, that's just my perspective, because I don't think it's fair that we just put it all on these 3 bonds in front of us, you know, which, to be honest, I would say are more of a essential need versus some of other ones we've already approved. So that would be my suggestion.
And Councilmember Ballerin, that wasn't the intent of having the 3. These are just the 3 that haven't passed out of committee yet. But the intention of tonight is to have a larger conversation on everything. So we'll get that printout and look at that as well. Councilmember Keegan.
I think, though, my concern is, I mean, we authorize the borrowing. The administration is not actually required to do that borrowing or to proceed with that project, despite the authorization from the council. And I guess from my perspective, particularly given that we have a transition in administration, I would not feel comfortable as the legislative body pulling back any one particular bond or project. I think those decisions really need to be made as the administration transitions in January, if what and anything that's going to be cut from borrowing, as opposed to us hand selecting projects here and there. That doesn't really make any sense to me. And I don't know what other people's thoughts are, but I would prefer that we either don't pass anything before the end of the year, which is also incredibly not smart, and have the administration come back to us at the beginning of next session, or we pass through what has been presented to us by the current administration and allow the next incoming administration to make careful and cautious decisions about what projects are going to continue forward and what is not.
May I?
Councilmember Keegan, I do tend to agree with that sentiment, because we're not saying that these will be actual bonds, we're just giving the authority. And the follow-up question to that, and just going off of public comment, from both of your perspectives, do you think that there's a need to make some material debt cuts?
To next year's capital plan? I leave that to you. I think that's not really my decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be a serious look at the prioritization. You know, the 26 capital debt plan is 25% smaller than 2025, so there has been a recognition that the amount of debt needs to be reduced. You know, also looking at the capital plan, the vast majority of the plan is sort of tied up in 2-3 projects. You know, $7 million of debt for roadway repaving and resurfacing, you know, to go along with the city's about $10 million in state aid. You know, could there be an opportunity to, obviously we will expend the $10 million in state aid on road repaving. Is there an opportunity to do a different number between 10 and 17? That seems reasonable. You know, another large project in here is the traffic reconfiguration of Washington Park. You know, the council has, you know, voiced a lot of support for that, and the public is really looking for that project. And, you know, the remaining large project is the renovation of city buildings. You know, Swinburne rink is slated for a new roof. You know, that piece is getting, or is anticipated to receive some significant state aid. But again, as the treasurer mentioned, do you defer some of these other items that are possible? You know, the remainder of the capital plan is somewhat small in individual project size. These are in the hundreds of thousands, and, you know, aren't going to provide any meaningful debt service relief in 2027 or 2028 as part of the financial plan.
Yeah, I would say that my advice remains the same as it has for 11 years, that if you, as a council, really don't think a project worthwhile and worth, you know, doing, then you should vote against it. Outside of that, I would, if I was in your position, then I would vote for the capital plan and then allow the administration, kind of as Council Member Keegan stated, to make those decisions. as appropriate. And I do, want to reiterate that right now our debt situation is fairly good. I mean, we're under the 10% threshold, which is what the city policy is and what is best practice. But 27 and 28 are going to be, we're going to have to manage within that with the band debt we currently have, plus the debt service that we already have on our schedule here. So.
And just to clarify, going over that 10%, 2027, 2028 is also not expecting any net new debt happening in those years. So it's just what we will have today moving forward.
The debt service schedule and debt report lays out the actual bonded debt that we have.
Mm-hmm.
What is the debt report also shows, for example, that we have $4.5 million band pay down in 2026. So that gets us to about 4.5. That gets us to about 16.7 million or so in debt service payments in 2026, and that's well under the 10% threshold. 2027 and 28 are going to be different because we either will have to borrow on the ban, and that will require increased pay downs plus interest as bands go, or we turn that into bonded debt, which would, the first payment on that bonded debt would come in 2017, and that could be, $5 million in 2017 plus whatever we have on the ban as well.
2027.
2027, yes, thank you.
And the reason why I say that is because with the new administration coming in, I'm sure there's going to be new initiatives, new capital projects, new interests that will naturally come. And so that'll be even more of a consideration that the future body and future administration have to take into factor when you look at this holistically. Councilmember Ballerin.
So I guess my question is, if we make some tough cuts today, does it give us more wiggle room and more space next year when we may have other initiatives in front of us?
Marginally. The way the bonded debt works is that usually it's down the road where you really see, if you knock off $2 million or $5 million off the capital plan for this year, it's not going to have an enormous effect on the year-to-year outlays over the next 1, 2, 3, 10 years.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Items bonded for in 2026 aren't going to require a principal payment until 2028. So reducing the 2026 debt, as the treasurer mentioned, would have a marginal effect in 2027, and then you would see some impact in 2028.
But do we have, because what I'm hearing is that we don't have any major debt being taken off the books. So I remember 8 years ago when we bought those beautiful new lights, we were deciding where we should go and do either a 10-year and a 15-year, and I was an advocate for a 10-year, and we went for the 15-year, because that would have meant in 2 years, we'd have $15 million of payments off of our books. And now we have another 7 years of that's going to stay on our books. So we're in this hole now. We're in this hole where, yes, it may be 2028, but 2028 is the year we're going to have massive problems because the landfill is going to be closed in that year. We're going to have other new investments that we're going to have to be making. So I'm just saying, should we be looking to even just cut $1 million off of this debt to try to give ourselves some wiggle room in 2027 and 2028? Like, I guess unless there's something that I'm missing, unless there's a big debt that's coming off, like that $15 million for the lights, that's not coming off until 7 years from now. But if there's other stuff that you guys are aware of that can help ease some of our concerns, share it now, because my concerns are not feeling eased right now.
So if you look at the debt schedule that is contained in the budget on page 97, it's also in the debt report, you'll see that in the next 3 years, about 36.5 million will come off the book, come off our books as debt. Sorry?
But how much are we putting back on? So it's like
Sure.
we pay a credit card, but then we pick up a car payment.
These are the decisions. I mean, my point is that taking $1 million off is going to have a very small, is going to make a very small difference. If you're concerned about, you know, adding $1 million or $2 million on debt service payments year to year, you'd have to take off a lot more than just $1 million here, $1 million there in the projects. And the lights count for about $2.2 million in the debt service payments over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
What page was that on there, yes?
97 of them.
97 of the budget
Thank you.
book.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. And I'm not trying to be difficult.
Nope.
I'm just, like, we're in this for the next 4 years, and I'm just, like, I don't want to be in place next year where we're really talking about not being able to pay for police officer vehicles because we're hitting the cap. I don't want to be in that position. So I'd rather be the guy that everyone hates because maybe we don't need to redo our bathrooms in the park. I know. I'm just saying. See, and that's the problem. As soon as you start saying stuff, you're going to be the guy everybody hates. But I'm just, like, I'd rather be having those tough conversations now where we have a little bit of wiggle room than putting ourselves in a place where we have less wiggle room next year and possibly in 2028 where we have, you know, really no wiggle room at all.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. As a resident, I'd certainly like to see all these projects go through. As a treasurer, I don't really particularly care which ones you greenlight and which ones you don't. And I would say that, you know, again, if you feel that these should not be projects that you should vote on or vote in favor of, don't do it. But I think nothing prevents the city and the next administration and you from having those conversations come January, whether or not you greenlight the actual bond authorization in this cycle. Because even if you don't, that need will probably still be there, that want will still be there. Councilman Anane needs his bathrooms. You know, those needs will remain whether or not you vote on it this year.
Yeah. To add to that, I'm just looking at the comprehensive list of bonds we have, and these are all things that I know we as a body all support. Police and police vehicle replacements, fire station infrastructure improvements, renovations to city buildings much needed, traffic speed reduction, traffic speed studies, street lights. We get into Capitol Hills, right? And if we want to, as a body, in a collective city, if you want to increase the cost of Capitol Hills in the future to generate more revenue, then you have to bring some improvements to the to the land itself. Yeah, the water system. Thank you, Megan. So like there are things in here that I feel like as chair I support all of these initiatives, and there's not one that sticks out that you do not, or we as a body would not support. So that's where we get into the situation of do we authorize and then the new body come 2026 work with the administration, work with the treasurer, work with the budget director to see what they truly proceed with bonds. Councilmember Keegan.
I just also want to note that, I mean, we could spend hours here tonight going back and forth on ordinances, bond ordinances, but all but these 3 that are on the agenda for this evening have already passed out of committee. So this particular committee has no way to pull them back. So you're now getting into the weeds of having to convince the full 15-member body to vote up or down various different projects. And so, again, my thoughts are we either hold them all back and reintroduce them in January and have that discussion in January, or we pass them through and we allow the administration to make the difficult decisions about what borrowing it actually wants to do and what policies and projects it actually wants to proceed with given the fiscal picture of the city.
Thank you. And my strong preference is to pass them in this year's body to close budget season prior to your new body coming in. And I'm wondering if you can opine on the timing, because I know that's always been a topic here about passing these no later than December because of timing issues we run up against. So can you talk through that?
Yeah, correct. We need to get the bond authorizations put together and then put out to, we need to advertise them and then get everything together for the late March sale, essentially. If you get these things done by December 31st, that would be a fantastic gift to me to be able to deal with these. Generally speaking, if they're January 31st is the drop dead date that we've asked for, and that has been largely complied with in the past. But December would be fantastic.
Thank you. I'm going to open to other council members, and I'll circle back to Councilmember Ballard and Councilmember Conti.
Thank you. And I would get them done this year. You go into the next year, you're going to start this process all over again, because that's what's happened in the past. Just a clarification, as treasurer, you actually have the final say in whether or not you go to market with something. Even if the administration wants something, you're.
Correct.
I know in the past your predecessor also made some decisions in terms of bonding and length that were contrary to what was anticipated, but
Correct.
you can decide we're not going to do X, Y, Z, even though it was authorized, even if the executive said it was needed or whatever. I mean, and you can also go determine the amount that you want to use within the authorization.
Yeah, that's correct.
Have you ever veered from what was authorized?
I have not. I think the only discussions that we really had in my tenure here has been over the time, the length of time.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been fortunate, I think, to be in agreement on prior bonding issues and borrowing issues.
Okay. Once you have gone and you receive the funds, I'm just thinking also, at that point, you have flexibility in terms of whether or not certain expenditures are made or not made after? That's a little bit different in terms of, I understand, in terms of once you have them, then it's different than.
Yeah, once we have the funds, the administration is enabled to expend the funds for those projects.
Right.
You know, what we ran into this year is we didn't, just for an example, we didn't borrow the full value of an authorization, but work steamed ahead more quickly than anticipated on, I think it was the West Hill Community Center, for example. And so we need to go back out to get that money so we could actually pay the bills. Generally speaking, once the money is in our coffers from the band sale, it's there for the administration to use, for the departments to use.
So ultimately, I'm thinking in terms of we authorize a certain level, that then moves to the executive branch, your branch, whatever. That's going to be a whole other discussion before you actually go to market. And there might be differences between what the executive wants versus what you might feel is prudent, and ultimately you're the final determinant as to whether or not
Correct.
what you go for.
Yeah, I will say we've been very fortunate, particularly the last, 3-4 years, in working with the administration to really have them get into the nitty-gritty of these projects to actually project what they need for this year and how much they need for this year. You know, let's say it's a $5 million bond authorization, but, you know, you can order the fire truck this year and not pay for it till next year, so we don't borrow on that till next year, things like that. So we work very closely to
Yeah, I think
efficiently as possible.
I think budget and treasury, we obviously have a good working relationship, and myself and the deputy treasurer, we sit down and go through every single project and say, okay, here's the cash flow on this. Let's issue half of what was authorized because, well, we're going to design it. That doesn't cost much, so that's not going to be much cash outlay. We might have 2 months of construction in the current year, and the construction is going to finish next year. So we sit and go through every single project in that manner, and as the treasurer mentioned, so for example, on West Hill, we didn't issue the full amount, and, you know, we never bat 1,000, so we needed another couple million to close out the bills for the year.
Just for the record, I am concerned about the capital side, and we're not talking about the operating side based on the third quarter report, but I'm also concerned about the operating side And I know there's going to be some real difficult decisions next year in terms of the 2026 budget, even though it's been adopted. And I'm glad I won't be here. So.
I didn't say that, but I might feel it. Councilmember Anani.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And, as a council member, I always try to be balanced, whether sometimes working with administration or sometimes calling out when I feel like the administration could do a little bit more, a little less, particularly when it comes to taxpayer finances. But, when we look at some of these bonds, it's really needed in many of our communities. And I know that many council members met one-on-one with the executive branch earlier this year, and they spoke about their specific project that they would like to see improvements on. So I fully support getting it done this year. I know that as council members, there's, particularly for the perception of it, you want to show that you're fighting to reduce the debt, you're fighting to protect taxpayer dollars. But, one of the things sometimes when I think about this administration is that there's no gimmicks in here when it comes to some of the bonds. I think some of these are spot on with the money that's being requested for the projects, and really have listened to some of the council members and their priorities. So I'm in full support of getting this done this year.
Councilmember Ballerin.
So 2 things. One, I think next year we're going to have a much tougher conversation, and I'm open to that. Hopefully something will change. Hopefully some new revenue will come in that is not on our radar right now, and it won't be as severe as I am concerned it might be, especially as we get closer to 2028. So there's one I can easily point out that I'd be okay with saying let's not move that forward, but I'm gonna let that be for now. I do want to make the committee aware that I will not be voting for Ordinance 43 that want .101.25 today. And I wish engineering was here. I do not know how the engineering department did not put no streets on this in the 11th ward, a majority district with the worst street record in our city. I do not know why the engineering department decided to do that. No, that's a tip. They've been hanging that tip over my head for the last 3 years. For the last 3 years, the 11th ward has only gotten 1 block on this list. And I am a true believer of some years have been better for the 11th than other wards. So I've been, I get it. Some years are better than others for some wards, and I understand that. But to have none under the bonding, with it being the worst rated ward and a majority minority ward, I cannot sit here and vote for that. And I wish the engineering department was here. I wish I could have that conversation with them. I know that's not you guys, and I totally respect that, but I just want to let the committee know, and I am very aware that that might force us to have to pull this from committee and just have a direct vote on it on Monday because of the way we have quorum today. But I just, in good conscience, I just can't vote for it the way it is. And again, I wish engineering was here to explain why they couldn't find 1 block in the 11th ward, where we have 60% of our streets between 1 and 5. They couldn't find 1 block, and I gave them quite a few to take care of based on the bondage. I just want to make the body aware of that, so that so we may not want to bring that up because it wouldn't, just based on the quorum that we have today, it wouldn't have the numbers.
Thank you, Councilmember Ballerin. Okay, so before, we are going to get into 30, 42, and 43 for discussion, but before we do, are there any additional questions on the general conversation around capital projects and debt authorizations? Okay, so let's move forward to ordinance 30-101-25. An ordinance, and this is one that we held and did not pass out of committee. An ordinance authorizing certain purchases by the city of Albany, New York at a maximum estimated cost of $2 million, and authorizing the lease financing or the issuance of $2 million serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, police vehicles, equipment replacement.
Madam Chair, if I may, we sent a revised version that should be 1.5 million.
Do we have that revised version? Okay, thank you. Okay, while we get that revision, we'll turn to Councilmember Keegan.
Did that trend down because we were able to address the transfer of insurance funds for vehicle replacement?
Yeah, that the department is, 2 million, I believe, was their initial request, and we were able to accommodate, additional purchases in other manners, so we cut it back to 1.5. And that's what's included in the proposed budget.
And are we addressing from an internal policy and procedure perspective how we're going to manage that going forward? Because I would hate to see, for example, when we carry insurance riders, whether it be DGS, fire department, police department, if vehicles go down and we receive an insurance payment for the replacement of that vehicle, I understand that payment may not cover the full cost of replacement, depending on how much that vehicle has been devalued, but I would hope from a policy perspective that rather than borrowing funds, we'd be looking at utilizing those insurance payments to offset taxpayer costs going forward, because we would never have known had it not been for that discussion back and forth about that particular bond per se.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, whether it's our insurance or the third-party insurance proceeds, they're always coming to the city and being applied to whether it be a particular replacement expense or another expense. So it's not that the taxpayers are ever not receiving the benefit from insurance proceeds. Is that
Right, but one of in our bond memo as well, or in our budget memo as well, you'll see that we laid out that we would like, to Councilmember Keegan's point, those proceeds to go directly back to that particular department so that they can replenish and replace with those funds.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll work with Treasury to, have a procedure going forward to have, a balance sheet object that, can carry those.
Thank you. We're just getting the revision right now. Okay, and just procedurally to read this into the record, the revised version is 30-101-25 MC, an ordinance authorizing certain purchases by the city of Albany, New York at a maximum estimated cost of $1,500,000 and authorizing the lease financing or the issuance of $1,500,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, police vehicles, and equipment replacement. Okay, and ultimately we held on this one related to the insurance piece, so any additional questions, comments on this ordinance? Okay, if not, is there a motion? Councilmember Keegan.
I make a motion to move ordinance 30-101-25 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Positive recommendation motion from Councilmember Keegan, second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 30-101-25 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation and will be voted on Monday's meeting. Okay, next, we have ordinance 42-101-25. This is an ordinance authorizing certain purchases by the city of Albany, New York at a maximum estimated cost of $650,000 and authorizing the lease financing or the issuance of $650,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, engineering, sidewalk reconstruction. So we have received a number of information from engineering and the administration today, right before this meeting. You all have the subsequent attachments that show you the list of streets and sidewalks by ward, whether or not the sidewalk is partial, full, minimal, and in particular, again, this one is related to sidewalks for $650,000. Comments, questions on this ordinance? Looks like there's also a corresponding memo on the selection process. They call out some specific words, so I'm just trying to read through this quickly. Make sure we're not missing anything. I was trying to find something maybe mentioning the 11th ward in an explanation, but I'm not seeing anything there. Okay, so questions, comments on sidewalks? Councilmember Ballerin.
I will support the sidewalks because sidewalks have not been the bigger issue that I've been advocating for the last 3 years. So I'm okay with moving that forward.
Any additional comments? Okay, if not, is there a motion? Councilmember Keegan.
I would like to make a motion to move ordinance 42-101-25 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, ordinance 42-101-25 passed out of committee. Positive recommendation from Councilmember Keegan, second from Councilmember Ballerin. Unanimous support of the quorum present, and that will be voted on Monday evening. I'm going to actually ask a question to our research council. In relation to 43-101-25, we've heard that we have 3 quorum, and we have 1 that will not be supporting this. So we should, from your opinion, hold, right, and pull out on Monday for the body to vote? Okay. So we are going to hold on ordinance 43-101-25. That doesn't mean that we can't have further discussion. Would anyone like to have any further comments on this ordinance? Councilmember Keegan first.
I will just note, in case engineering goes back and looks at the record on this, that the 9th ward, which also is not necessarily up there in terms of street quality. However, we did have 3 streets selected, one of which was not included on the list, and I'm not sure how this particular street was even selected, because if I were to go through the 9th ward and look at what's in bad condition, that would not have been one of the streets. I mean, I have a whole list of streets, and it's not remotely on there. But if we could make compromise on that one, I would be willing to give up that one street in order to accommodate Councilmember Ballerin's request.
Obviously, you know, I'd have to speak with the city engineer about that. I would also say that, you know, sometimes these streets aren't selected purely on, you know, PCI. They are selected on, we know National Grid or the water department is going to be going in and doing other work, and that's why that street's going to be ripped up and repaved. So, you know, PCI is, of course, the #1 indicator of when streets are going to get done, but it's certainly not the only one.
Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Sharon, and I appreciate that kind act by Councilmember Keenan. And to be 100% honest, the passion you heard before is really a build-up of 3 years, where the 11th has only had 1 street. And the conversation that I've had is Well, we've got that tip coming on Central Avenue, and there's a lot of other investments going into other wards, plus they still get streets as part of the bonding part. So, you know, I am a true believer of resources should go where they need it, but they'll need it in my ward as well. So that's why I'm hoping we can have a conversation with engineering and, you know, revise that. I appreciate the kindness gesture by Councilwoman Keegan, but I also too plan on reaching out to engineering tomorrow to see if there's any opportunities to not have this be as public at the main meeting, at the Monday meeting about this. Because again, this is a minority majority district with, based on their numbers, the worst rated streets. 60% of our streets are 1 to 5. So I'm hoping we can get that corrected between now and Monday. And again, I appreciate the kind gesture from my colleague.
I'll just go on the record to support you, Councilmember Ballerin, in that effort. I know the TIP funding for both 11th and First have been 3 years in the making and often brought into conversation when these conversations happen. As you know, that's the street we're focusing on. But I know last year both you and I were not receivers of streets. This year I am seeing 2 for the First Ward, but none for the 11th again. And TIP was the justification for last year. So at some point, the 11th should be being serviced and getting their fair share of street allocations. Councilmember Ballerin, or Councilmember Anane?
Gotcha. As relates to this complete street candidates report, and I'm just curious, Councilmember Ballerin, is this the first time that you're seeing this, or
This just came out at
We
like
just
3
got them
p.m.
today.
From
Okay.
the administration.
Gotcha. Thank you. Gotcha. Thank you. No, I share some concerns, and I like to, support my colleague when it comes to, this is their own engineering reporting, again, the 11th Ward is the worst, right? But it's like, not to have any is kind of concerning, and I hope that get cleared up before the next meeting. I understand that there's water improvements and national grid, et cetera, but, I hope that we could do better, especially when not so long ago, we passed the equity agenda legislation, so I don't even know how that doesn't even apply when it comes to street paving, so hopefully somebody looks into that as well. Thank you.
Any additional comments on this one? Okay. As stated, we are going to hold and attempt to pull out a committee on Monday to have a vote on this particular ordinance. With that, we have reached the conclusion of our topics for discussion this evening. So is there a motion to adjourn? And I will, before we adjourn, I will say thank you to our city treasurer, to our budget director for joining us. Appreciate your time. And if any committee member is willing, it's your time.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Ballerin, a second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, aye. All right. Great. The meeting has concluded. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.